While openly opposing the World Economic Forum, advocating for freedom, espousing for Alberta sovereignty, many were shocked to hear you speak in favor of net zero. Net zero for many is a Paris Agreement buzzword, often one that's pushed by progressives. How do you justify employing that language and running for the leader of a conservative oil-rich province?
The industry is using that language. There's about 90% of our energy companies who have set an aggressive target using that language. We have companies like Air Products and Dow Chemical that are announcing that they're investing here with that as their target. So I think it's our job to support industry rather than fight against them.
Adam Soos here for Rebel News with our latest UCPleadership.com coverage. We're on location at the Rooftop YYC in, as the name suggests, Calgary, Alberta, for the Western Standards frontrunner debate for the candidates who are most likely, at this point anyways, according to the polls, to be the next leader of the UCP and potentially the next premier of Alberta. Jean, Travis Toews, and Danielle Smith will all be taking the stage tonight, sharing their opinions and their case as to why they think they're the best leader. I'm also here with my colleague Celine Gallus, and we'll be asking during the scrum period some tough questions, trying to further probe their positions and arguments as to why they think they can lead Alberta moving forward. So I am now joined by Derek Filderbrand. Derek, tell me about this format, the sort of front runners, the people right now most likely to win this race. Why did you decide to sort of take this format?
Well, first, if you look at the stage, it ain't big enough for any more than 3. Even I, the moderator, don't have room on stage. So we had no choice but to leave it to 3. So what we did is we looked at all the available polling data from professional, good, scientific, reliable polls, for what they are, but they're generally in the neighborhood. And we looked at who has a reasonable chance of getting to the final ballot. And every single poll showed that was Danielle Smith, Travis Toews, and Jean had at least some shot of getting to that final ballot, top 3. So we wanted to have, because there's 2 official UCP debates where everyone's there, and those are official debates, so it has to be everyone. I wanted something that was a bit more cut and thrust. The questions today are going to be a lot more pointed. They're not going to be, official party debates. I think the moderator of the last one, Jeff Davis, was pretty good, but the questions at those kinds of events tend to be they're designed to showcase candidates, not getting anyone in trouble. My motivation, let's be honest, it's good TV. So I want combat. I want to see an exchange of ideas, and you can't do that with 7 people on the stage. So we made a really tough choice. I didn't like doing it, but just physically we had to limit it to 3 to be able to fit everyone on the stage. So we invited the 3 front runners, and so I think one of the 3 people here tonight is going to be premier, and I wanted to showcase those 3 going mono a womano, whatever you call that.
Do you think that there's definitely an opportunity for sort of more depth rather than the one-liners of the clips? We'll actually get some back and forth, some interaction between the 3 people most likely to take the reins?
Well, I hope so. Every debate's got its trade-offs, and unless I gave 5 minutes in between, and that would just be kind of a boring forum. They're going to have 1 minute in between. There's a lot of room for exchange on a lot of different topics, and room for some structured interjection. There's going to be one-liners, but I think there's enough time because there's 3. If you had 7 over 2 hours, they're just going to be trying to get their talking points out, and that's it. Their talking points are probably going to run out in the first 45 minutes, and after that, they're just going to sound like they're repeating themselves if they're just trying to get back on their talking points. So when you've got 3 people in 2 hours, if they're going to come off well, they'd be advised not to get beyond their talking points and get into it.
So a man who needs no introduction, John Carpe, the boss at the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. Just generally, what has your sort of outlook been on this leadership race? Obviously, with your field of interest, we saw a lot of constitutional and fundamental infringements on people's rights. Is there a candidate or a few that are speaking to those issues more prominently than others?
I'm here more just as an observer, and it would be my wish that every candidate of every party would just agree to basic human rights, basic charter freedoms. I'll just be watching with curiosity to see what the candidates are saying about lockdowns.
Right. And now, without asking you to specifically speak to politics, what do you think are sort of principal concerns, or at least what are principal concerns that you've heard maybe from some of your clients or from Albertans broadly that they are sort of putting at the forefront of their considerations?
I think most people realize that lockdowns did not save lives, notwithstanding a lot of government propaganda. I think people realize that it was not the way to go. And I think there's a growing awareness that taking away our rights and freedoms is not the way to address a virus or any other problem. But we still have a lot of work to do in society. I know a lot of people are still scared after 2.5 years. They're still scared of a virus, having been lied to by politicians who said that this would be as scary as the Spanish flu of 1918. And, it's public policy should be based on facts and reality and truth, not on fear-mongering.
So I'm once again joined by Todd Loewen, one of the leadership hopefuls. We spoke the other day, lots of people sort of checking out that interview. Yeah. Sort of a different format tonight. It is the three people who are the front runners. You, according to polls at least, are not in that position. First off, what do you sort of think of that format?
Well, I would have liked to seen all the candidates involved. Obviously, I think I should have been on there. When we look at the Western Standard, their own polls, I sit, I think, at number 2. So I mean, polls are polls. There hasn't been anything really done that's been scientific and really a proper poll. So, I mean, we're just grasping at straws, trying to figure out who would be the front runner and the second and third. So, but yeah, well, I would have been nice to have been here. But it is what it is. I'm here to kick some tires and see what's going on. So,
yeah, certainly no hurt feelings. Great to see you here. Now, given that these three people will be taking the stage, is there anyone of those three who sort of maybe you think might be standing out on some core issues for Albertans? Are there other people that you're sort of very concerned about? Or at least what sort of issues do you think they need to get right in the eyes of Albertans?
Well, I think the biggest thing is trust. I think we've seen a lack of trust for politicians and government from Albertans in the last 1.5 to 2 years. And that's the main thing that we need to focus on. And it's whether these candidates, including myself, can build that sort of trust with Albertans. And again, I think I'm the one that can bring that trust forward and get things back together, get things back on track, and take us into the next election and beat Rachel Notley and the NDP.
Trust is an interesting concept, certainly. We have Brian Jean, who actually originally lost to Jason Kenney, now coming back, so there's a bit of drama there. We have the legacy of Danielle Smith with floor crossing. Travis Toews, the finance minister, who oversaw the massive Dina Hinshaw bonus, as well as a number of other sort of questionable financial things. And then finally yourself ejected from the UCP and then returning. Is this like the most dramatic leadership race in history?
Well, I think there's a lot of baggage going to be up on that stage here today, obviously. And you're right. We have Danielle Smith with the floor crossing. We have Brian Jean with the failure to take out the NDP in 2015. And then we have, of course, an insider of insiders, Travis Toews, who sat there with the front row seat through all these decisions in the last 3 years that people are so frustrated with. Myself, I think I come with a bit of a clean slate. Yeah, ejected from caucus. But when we look at where the people of Alberta, what they said to Jason Kenney just a couple of months ago, I think I'm on the side with the majority of Albertans.
Smith, what would you do as Premier to protect freedom of speech and freedom of the press from federal action?
From what I've seen, the federal government is trying to regulate our internet media companies like Western Standard and Rebel and True North on the right-hand side of the spectrum, and Tyee, Canada Lands, and the Observer on the left-hand side of the spectrum. So this is hitting both of those types of media outlets equally. What happens with the CRTC is you have to go and defend your license for broadcasting every 5 years. And if you have too many complaints against you, they can hold life or death decision over pulling your broadcast license. That's the reason why mainstream media is not giving the full and robust debate that we now see in the alternative media. And I think they wanted to come in and do the exact same thing here. What I would say is we should make Alberta a free media and free speech zone. If it means that we have to work with Elon Musk and his Starlink satellite service so that we can have free media here, broadcasting to the rest of the country, we should do it. And I'm not saying that idly. I've talked to somebody who's broadcasting into the Ontario market from Florida because they believe this is going to happen, but it shouldn't be happening here.
While openly opposing the World Economic Forum, advocating for freedom, espousing for Alberta sovereignty, many were shocked to hear you speak in favor of net zero. Net zero for many is a Paris Agreement buzzword, often one that's pushed by progressives. How do you justify employing that language when running for the leader of a conservative oil-rich province?
The industry is using that language. There's about 90% of our energy companies who have set an aggressive target using that language. We have companies like Air Products and Dow Chemical that are announcing that they're investing here with that as their target. So I think it's our job to support industry rather than fight against them. I think that what I'm seeing is that there's a huge amount of investment in technology. We are world leaders, and the Ottawa elites don't seem to understand this. We are world elites in carbon capture, in developing the hydrogen economy. We are going to be at the forefront of that. And I believe that by exporting dramatically more LNG, we're going to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and all other pollutants around the world. So I see that the industry is embracing the challenge, and they're doing it in a way that is going to make sure that our industry grows and our revenues grow and our jobs grow. So I support that.
So now, do you find, I get playing ball and trying to go along with the industry, but do you believe that employing the language of radical environmentalists, even if the industry is doing it, participating in carbon scheme, is in a way, whether it's direct or tacit, sort of ramping up this broader eco language and broadening outreach for groups like the World Economic Forum that use the exact same language?
I guess it's been fairly routine to have that language. I've been in business advocacy for 2 years, and it's fairly routine for business advocates to be using that term. Part of the problem that we're facing is that the divestment movement has been targeting our industry, and our industry has had to demonstrate that they have good environmental standards, good social standards, good governance factors, and those are the things that that industry is doing to attract capital here. So that's the most important thing, is to make sure that capital gets attracted. I agree with you. I'm trying to use these hypercharged language. Maybe we shouldn't use them, but the goal of reducing emissions and the goal of being able to demonstrate that we're environmentally responsible, everybody's on board with that.
So, and just a really quick follow-up, are countries like Iran, Saudi Arabia, Venezuela playing those same games when they sell oil?
They have government-owned industries, and so they have their own ability to finance themselves. And that's part of the reason we've got to look at how we can be more self-sufficient. If we can repatriate our Alberta pension plan, maybe we can support our industry here with our own dollars. As long as we remain reliant on the international community for investment dollars, the industry is going to demonstrate that they have the very best environmental standards in the world. So they're using that language. They seem to have embraced the challenge. They're using carbon technology, and I think that we should support them in what they do so that we can continue to grow the economy.
There seems to be an inclination, even among some UCP leadership hopefuls, to feel the need to participate in environmental tax schemes as a sort of apology and justification when it comes to selling Alberta oil. We have the cleanest, most ethical oil in the world, both in terms of environmental and human costs. Countries like Iran and Venezuela aren't apologizing for their far less equitable oil. Why would premiers or potential premiers of Alberta be apologizing and participating in these schemes?
I have no idea. I, first of all, am not aware of any schemes like that I'm involved in, and nor would I, because I don't do that kind of thing as a general rule. But I can't make excuses for other people and their bad decision making. We've seen a number of bad decisions by past leaders of parties and by ministers and by the premier, and I don't support any of those decisions, and I wouldn't support them. I think we need to get back to a classical education. I think we need to get back to basics in healthcare. I think we need to serve Albertans and get rid of the other people that are not interested in serving and only taking.
As a follow-up, the most beneficial thing Alberta could do for the environment presently is to replace the output of oil from other countries that are 100%. Producing less ethical oil. I guess, first of all, do you agree? And what would you do to ensure that happens?
100%. I'd build pipelines in every direction. I'd take on the federal government. I'd work with Aboriginal groups in northern BC. I would redraw our borders. I would do whatever we possibly can to get more pipelines and get more Alberta crude into the world, because that's exactly right. The more Alberta crude that's burned, the more natural gas that's burned out of Alberta, the better off the world's going to be by far.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
I'm very proud of our oil industry.
My colleague has another one for you.
Very proud of our oil industry.
Yes, let me go. All right. What do you plan to do about the radical spread of progressive gender ideology breaking its way into our school system?
Well, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that autonomy for Albertans is a central theme of my campaign, and it is. And what I'm going to make sure is that Albertans get the opportunity to pick their school system their way. And that means charter schools, private schools, public schools, as many different school options as Alberta wants and Albertans want, that's what I'm going to provide. Because if you don't want your child in that situation, you don't have to have your child in that situation. I'm not going to put my child in that situation. I have a 3.5-year-old, and I can't imagine anything more important than having a great life, raising that child, and letting her be everything she can be.
Just a quick follow-up question. question, just something a little bit more specific. What do you think about the literature that is pushing on gender confusion with youngsters?
Well, I'm not aware of it. I'm not aware of the particular information or pamphlets that you're suggesting, but I know this, that I make sure I look at everything my daughter reads, just like I did with my sons when I raised them, and I made sure I watched what they were watching on TV and the internet, and I had those child locks on, and I'm going to make sure that my child's not involved in things that I don't want my child to be involved in. And you know what? With autonomy, freedom of choice, Albertans can get that, and that's what I'm going to provide to them.
Dina Hinshaw received an outlandish nearly $250,000 bonus. As finance minister, you said that you never authorized nor approved this. How can people have confidence in the UCP's capacity to manage government and finances when senior officials are receiving immense payments and no one seems to be aware of it?
Yeah, I was outraged when I saw that, in fact, Dr. Dina Hinshaw had received that kind of a bonus or wage top-up. I had no awareness of it, and I can tell you this, that if I serve Albertans as their premier, I will change that. I will ensure that any bonus top-ups, wage top-ups to senior officials are approved by Cabinet, Treasury Board, or the premier.
Now, the "we're all in it together" sentiment from COVID-19 never really applied to politicians or health officials who continued to collect their salaries while others lost their jobs and their businesses. How do you justify cutting back services, including reduced hours at local emergency rooms, while health officials are billing $600,000 a year?
Well, look, right now we have a healthcare capacity crisis in Alberta. That's our big challenge. We need to do everything to ensure that we have doctors and nurses in healthcare, particularly, again, in rural areas. There's a couple of things I would do immediately to expand healthcare capacity. The challenge isn't a bricks and mortar challenge. The challenge is healthcare professionals. I would immediately order a credentialing criterion review for our healthcare credentialing bodies. We have thousands of foreign trained healthcare workers right now in the province. We need to find an expedited way to get them working in their profession. Look, in Beaver Lodge, I'll take a foreign trained nurse instead of no nurse. On some days, that's my option.
Well, as you can see, the event is wrapping up here in Calgary. This was probably one of the more conventional debate-style breakdowns. It was great to see people actually kind of going at it, addressing issues, and facing some more serious questions than we've seen at some of the other debates. We had an opportunity to ask some tough questions of the candidates as well, and speak to some people on location to garner their perspectives on this important race. As always, I'm encouraging you all to check in regularly at ucpleadership.com. And as always, I want to thank you all so much for tuning in. For Rebel News, I'm Adam Soos. Hey, to ensure that you're up to date and getting the other side of the story when it comes to the race for the leadership of the United Conservative Party, make sure you check in regularly at ucpleadership.com.